Hello everyone and welcome to another webinar by Royal Cyber. My name is Mir Mustafa Ali Pasha. I will be your host and one of the speakers for today. Some ground rules for a smoother experience before we start. So if you have trouble seeing my screen or hearing me, please notify in the chat window located on the right side of the screen. You can post your questions and comments in the chat box anytime during the presentation. There will be a dedicated slot for Q&A towards the end of the presentation where your questions will be answered in sequence. You can also post your questions or request any follow-up information on the email ID shown on the screen right here. And lastly, we would love to hear back from you about today's session by completing a short survey, which will be shared towards the end. Okay, so in the next 45 minutes or so, so we will talk about how to embrace CloudHub 2.0. What are the best practices and strategies for a seamless migration? So that's me on the left side. I manage the middleware and integration practice at Royal Cyber. And on the right side, I have my colleague, Mr. Haider Raza, who's a certified MuleSoft solution architect at Royal Cyber. And here is a quick look at the agenda. We will see what is MuleSoft's CloudHub 2.0. What are the benefits and features of this new deployment model? Let's look at the architecture and the deployment options available under this feature. And we'll also compare 2.0 with the other older versions of CloudHub. What are the best practices for migration and some technical considerations that should be kept in mind during your migration projects. And we'll also have a demo towards the end. First up about Royal Cyber, we are a mid-sized, fast-growing IT consulting and digital transformation company specializing in services, solutions, and software. We have over 2,000 consultants globally. Our headquarters is in Naperville, Illinois, in the US, but we have a global presence with office in Canada, UK, Australia, and the Middle East. We also have multiple offshore development centers in India. Our strategic partnership with a lot of technology companies on the globe, such as MuleSoft, Salesforce, IBM, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and others, coupled with our business agility and follow the sun delivery model, makes Royal Cyber an obvious choice for a lot of customers globally. We do provide reliable and high performing solutions and services on all the areas listed here, such as APIs, middleware integration, automation, cloud, data analytics, RPA, e-commerce, and so on. All right, so let's get into the topic. Let's look at what is CloudHub 2.0. So CloudHub 2.0 is the latest offering from MuleSoft that simplifies the deployment and running of your Mule applications and APIs in a containerized environment on the cloud. Underline that. So it's a fully managed, containerized, managed cloud service. Uh, let's look at how it all started, right? So MuleSoft provided a standalone deployment of a ESB solution that runs on-prem really well, and then they evolved from there. They released CloudHub 1.0. It's a fully managed PaaS solution that runs completely on the cloud, managed by MuleSoft. It also supports hybrid deployments where your sensitive APIs can run within your own data center. Then came Anypoint Runtime Fabric, an offering that allows APIs to be run on containers and be deployed on any public cloud Kubernetes service of your choice, such as EKS, AKS, GKE, or even OpenShift very recently, right? And it works on the concept of a shared responsibility model. Finally, we have CloudHub 2.0, which let's put it this way, right? Contains the best of all the benefits and excellent features of CloudHub 1.0 and RTF in one single piece. All right, so it's completely again managed by MuleSoft. You don't require any additional hardware maintenance for it. It supports containers just like your RTF. It supports global deployments across 12 different regions, which is very unique to this release. And it has a lot of out-of-the-box security features. Now that sort of tells you why you need CloudHub 2.0, but let's get into a few more things. Right? Number one, there are a lot of customers who want to move towards a containerized architecture, right? So this CloudHub 2.0, it is based on Kubernetes based architecture. You can scale your apps easily up and down based on the demand. There is no need to manage a dedicated load balancer, as CloudHub 2.0 provides an inbuilt ingress load balancer with auto scaling capabilities within the private space. We'll see what is private space shortly. And you also have the option to configure inbound and outbound firewalls. Now, this enables you to block or allow incoming traffic from specific ports, right? Last but not the least, again, so you are provided with a lot of built-in security policies that can secure your services and sensitive data using encrypted secrets. Okay, so you know what is CloudHub 2.0 and why do you need it? There are some new terminologies that have been introduced in CloudHub 2.0. Let's look at them. In 1.0, VPC, Virtual Private Cloud, is pretty popular, but in 2.0 world, it's called private space. Okay, it's a private Kubernetes cluster, very similar to that. And then in the cloud 1.0 you had worker, right? A worker node, which is nothing but an EC2 server instance of an API. So in 2.0, since this is based on again Kubernetes architecture, what we have here is called a replica, right? Which is again a container instance of an API, just like a worker is a EC2 server instance of an API. A replica is a container instance of your API, right? And in 1.2, you had a dedicated load balancer. We don't need that in 2.0. Instead, we have what's called as ingress controller, which gives you all the reverse proxy, load balancer, and traffic control option, traffic routing capabilities. Okay, now let's look at some of the key benefits and features of CloudHub 2.0. We'll start from the left, top left. So the first, I think, feature is replicas in itself. Now, what are replicas? Replicas are dedicated instances of Mule runtime engine that run your integration application, your APIs on CloudHub 2.0. It's very similar in the concept of CloudHub 1.0 workers, which we just saw in the previous slide. So each replica has a dedicated capacity, right, determined by vCores assigned to it. So it is completely isolated and can be deployed and monitored independently. And it can, in fact, run in specific global regions such as US, EU, and APAC, right? So it also offers a more granular fractional vCores allocation and resource utilization options, which are not available, which are limited, in fact, in Cloud 1.0, right? A vCore for replica vCore sizes can in fact start from as low as zero point 0.1 with a better memory capacity. Okay, and you can allocate 4 vCores per replica. That's a max that can be allocated, and you can have a maximum of 8 replicas there. Okay, the other one I think I should refer to is multi-tenant. Again, there are 3 levels of multi-tenancy supported. Um, a shared global region, which is called a shared space. We'll talk about it in a minute. A single tenant private space for applications, and lastly, a common management console and a platform services, which is shared by all the tenants and services. Right. So we will talk about these terms shortly in a while. Then it supports global deployments across 12 different regions in the globe. Um, it also gives you a container-based application isolation, a standardized lightweight isolation boundary by running each Mule instance and services as a separate container, thus improving your application performance overall. It also gives you a nice intelligent healing and zero downtime features. By intelligent healing, what it does, it monitors and recovers the replicas whenever they run into problems automatically, right? So if your underlying hardware fails or your applications are migrate to new replica, and if your application crashes, right, it is automatically redeployed by the platform, right? So what does zero downtime means is CloudHub 2.0 supports updating your applications at runtime without causing any downtime for end users of your HTTP APIs. How do we achieve it? We'll look at that in upcoming slides. Then you also have a seamless Mule clustering feature, and clustering enables multiple replicas to communicate with each other and share data, most importantly, right? Because they share memory. Applications or APIs can be deployed on a clustered mode, and offers rolling update deployments capability as well, right? And a minimum of two replicas are required for clustering. You can enable the clustering features on a per application basis as well, using Anypoint runtime manager console when either deploying a new application or deploying an existing one, redeploying an existing one. All right, so next comes is dynamic scaling and fault tolerance. So it can dynamically scale your infrastructure and the built-in services either horizontally or vertically to support your elastic transaction volume, right? That's very important. Now, horizontal scaling and fault tolerance can be achieved by increasing your number of replicas, whereas the vertical scaling can be accomplished by increasing your vCore size allocations. It also provides mutual TLS support, multiple trust stores. It's all the communication between the platform services and the Cloud Hub can be secured using SSL with client certificate authentications. And Then we have streamline operations, right? So it reduces the management overhead for DLBs and ingress with a new auto provisioning and auto scaling capability. And a new feature in another new feature in CloudHub 2.0 is the outbound firewall rules, which are not available in 1.0. Now there you can do that. You configure outbound firewall rules in CloudHub 2.0. Well, you can find a lot of information about replica sizes and resource CPU capacity and whatnot, and the link given below on the slide. Now let's look at some of the benefits, right? By now you should be obvious, but again, let's take a quick look at what benefit does it offer. Um, so CloudHub 2.0 improvements make it easier to learn, develop, and manage than 1.0, right? Some of the benefits are the deployment itself. The global it supports globally runtime deployments across 12 different regions. It supports elastic transaction volume with dynamic scaling infrastructure and built-in services, which you just saw in the previous slides. Deploying applications to shared spaces. We'll talk about what's a shared space shortly. But deploying applications to shared spaces do not require advanced setup or infrastructure maintenance. Right. You also get Amazon Web Service roles for resource access control. You get a lot of more granular vCore allocation options, which we already saw in the previous slides. You can also enable outbound firewall rule configs. It gives a lot of built-in security policies like encrypted secrets, firewall controls, restricted shell access, ingress self-service logs is one of the amazing features in CloudHub 2.0. Now you don't have to reach out to the support MuleSoft support team to enable or disable streaming locks. It's available by default. You can disable this feature if you don't need it from the runtime manager, right? And it gives you a future-proof architecture, right? It embraces the latest and the greatest, the containerization, Kubernetes, Red Hat OpenShift, you name it, running on public clouds, private clouds, you name it. It's all supported. So this platform, in a nutshell, helps you accelerate growth and innovate faster with its future-proof architecture, right? You can encrypt certificates, passwords, and other sensitive config data at rest, as well as in motion within the platform. Now let's look at the architecture and some of the deployment options. So, okay, so we have the two new concepts: shared spaces and private space. Let's see what they are and how they're different, right? So what is a shared space? A shared space is in fact an elastic cloud of resources for running your Mule instances in a multi-tenant environment. Okay. Then what's a private space? A private space is a evolution of VPCs and CloudHub 1.0. Okay, it is nothing but a virtual, dedicated, single tenant space, an isolated space within 2.0 to run your MuleSoft applications. Okay, so you get isolation in private space. You don't have that liberty within the shared space. Okay, but shared space is multi-tenant, private space is single tenant. Okay, and in a shared space your applications cannot connect to your apps sitting on your data center. Okay, whereas you can do that if you have created a private space, and that utilizes the VPN or the transit gateway features to talk to your on-prem or corporate data center. In a shared space, vanity domain names are not supported. Certificates, custom certificates are not supported, but they are supported and are required when you configure a private space for your applications to run there. Mm, and let's say endpoint security, right? So private endpoints are also not supported in shared space, but they are available within private space. Last mile security and SSL forwarding, right? Two great features, excellent features that we have seen. Now these are available in both the options, shared space or the private space. You have them. Configuring outbound firewall rules, that is not supported in the shared space. However, that's available within the private space feature. Now what does it do? It allows you to it gives you the capability to allow or block your inbound and outbound traffic to and fro within your private space, right? Private spaces are defined at the environment and business group levels to allow for deployment to the space in itself. There are some limits, in fact, right? So CloudHub 2.0 provides one shared space in each region to deploy your mules of applications, whereas you can create ample number of private spaces either within the same or different regions, right? So in essence, in each private space, you have to define a private network, which is a virtual cloud again, where apps are deployed to the private space run. A private network consists of a private space name, a private network region, CID or block, connection types, whether you're using VPN or a transit gateway to talk to your on-prem data center, and some optional internal DNS server names if you need them, and connections, in fact, to your external network itself. And this is a quick diagram that shows how the shared space works within the platform. You have this Anypoint control plane at the top, where you have Anypoint monitoring, logs, object store, runtime manager, exchange, and access management, totally controlled within the control plane that is running in the cloud. And you also have the bottom half is your Anypoint runtime plane, right? Where you have multiple worker nodes, and your use of applications are running as containers within the pods in these worker nodes which are shared. Okay, so this is your shared space architecture. One unique feature here is the URL itself. The URL pattern looks something like this, right? For public endpoints, it is your API name followed by a hyphen, a unique ID. Okay, it's a 6-digit unique ID appended to the application name to ensure its uniqueness. And then you have a shared, this shares again another 6-digit value associated with the space, be it private or shared, that your app is deployed to. Each private space gets a unique value for shard. Okay, now just like in CloudHub 1.0, the region is the last subdomain before the CloudHub 1. CloudHub.io. Okay, but the values of for CloudHub 2.0 are slightly different than compared to the values for 1.0. Okay, as an example, if you look at it, I have deployed my hello API, and the name of the API is hello API, but then you can see the unique ID is i7qf37, and the shard is 5sc6y6, whereas the region name is USA E2. Okay, and if you're interested in the complete list of regions supported by MuleSoft CloudHub 2.0, you can click this link and it will take you to that location. Okay, and again, so this is again a quick look at the architecture with a private space. As you can see, you have data centers here, VPCs here connected through an Anypoint a VPN or a transit gateway. You have a control plane which holds all your access management, runtime manager, API manager capabilities, monitoring, OS2, and Anypoint Exchange. And the runtime plane itself is talking to the control plane through mutual TLS connections. Your applications are running on your worker nodes, right? And on top of them, you have your ingress load balancers. So any call from your external applications, be it on your desktop, mobile, or e-commerce applications trying to reach your APIs sitting behind the CloudHub 1.0, has to pass through the traffic has to pass through the NLBs, which are then routed to ingress. Ingress translates them into the address for the Mule APIs, and the APIs are invoked and it gets back. So in the runtime plane, as you can see, this architecture in fact is very similar to RTF architecture, if you're very familiar with that. The only exception being the runtime plane is now hosted within CloudHub 2.0 instead of sitting on an on-prem environment. Okay, so in this runtime plane, you will have at least one um, shared space, if there's a shared space in fact, but this is specific to private space, and you can have as many private spaces as you want. We talked about that. The worker nodes within the runtime plane have parts where which is where your APIs usually run. You can set up last mile security and SSL forwarding to secure your backend APIs, and to also achieve end-to-end security. All communication with the control plane is secured using mutual TLS, and you can create this private space itself to connect to your applications which are running on your on-prem data center using Anypoint VPN. You can also connect to other VPCs using Transit Gateway. Let's talk about the deployment models in 2.0. There are two. One is called rolling update. The other one is recreate. You can choose any model depending on your requirement. In rolling update, the older version of your application is retained until the new version is successfully redeployed. Hence, it requires additional vCores. It does offers zero downtime, right? Because your API is up and running until the newer version is ready to go live, deploy successfully. This ensures availability by incrementally updating your replicas. Okay, if you have more than one. And in the recreate deployment model, your old replica is immediately terminated and your new replica is deployed. Redeployment is very quick, so it does not require any additional resources, unlike your rolling updates. So one of the questions that I keep getting asked is which deployment model should I go with, right? So if your business, your team is fine with a downtime, then go for recreate. Otherwise, rolling update, I think, is your only option, right? That's left out. Okay. Now let's look at the comparison of CloudHub 2.0 features with 1.0. These are some of the key differences. 2.0 supports clustering, deployment rollback, outbound firewalls, load balancer logs, VPCs, VPN transit gateways, multiple trust stores. Whereas CloudHub does not support most of them, except for your load balancer logs and VPNs, VPCs, and transit gateways. Custom connectors, CloudHub connector, custom notifications are not supported in 2.0, whereas they are supported in 1.0. High availability is supported in both options. Object stores are supported. Data graph is on the product roadmap, not supported at this point in time. TLS 1.0, direct connect, AWS VPC peering, persistent queues, API proxies, flex gateways, Anypoint, BDB, all that stuff. Partner manager not supported in 2.0 yet. For a detailed list of comparison, you can click this link, and it should take you to the website with Mule documentation. Now, what are some of the technical considerations we have to keep in mind while using CloudHub 2.0. The first one is VPC peering and direct connect are deprecated, and whereas your transit gateway and VPNs are still supported. VPN is also highly available out of the box. Application names must be unique only at the organization or private space or environment level, right? Whereas in 1.0 that was not the case. To move applications between regions, you must redeploy, and you cannot simply move the app. Both HTTP and HTTPS traffic will use port 8081 only. 8082 is no longer required. Bundling of multiple listeners are not required due to the availability of fractional vCore offerings. Okay, and inbound static and inbound and outbound static IPs can be provisioned at the private space level and not allocated at the application level, unlike 1.0. Persistence queues are gone, so you have to replace them with Anypoint MQ or any other different broker for your load distribution. You can now set a specific time zone in a cron scheduler instead of only using UTC, as in 1.0. Right. MuleSoft also recommends using Anypoint monitoring for tracking all your business transactions because application insights are no longer supported. If you're using Mule plugin for a CI/CD, make sure you use version 3.7.1 or above. Application bursting is an excellent feature, but again, this is not guaranteed, and it depends on your research usage of your other applications that are deployed in the private space, right? Private endpoints at this moment do not offer your mutual TLS capabilities. CloudHub 2.0, it mandates that you publish your artifacts to Anypoint Exchange before deploying them. Every deployed application in the same private space will use same set of inbound and outbound IPs. This means applications deployed in the same private space will use the same set of inbound and outbound static IPs, right? So if you have a requirement to have unique IPs per application, then this would require you using a different private space. Okay, now what are some of the limitations? Number one, I think I've been repeating this: VPC peering and direct connect are not supported. Only VPN and transit gateways are available. Persistence feature is gone. Data graph TLS are not supported. Runtime versions, yeah, this is important, right? So runtime versions prior to 4.3.0, like 4.2 and below 3.x, are not supported. You have to start with at least 4.3.0. Application insights and creating custom notifications are not supported anymore. um, Anypoint monitoring, you must set up alerts for apps individually. We cannot set alerts for all the apps simultaneously. Now scheduler run changes will require application restart. This is very important. Okay. So we also know the scheduler trigger only run on primary nodes, but make sure when you make changes to the schedules, you have to manually restart them. Secure properties are stored in a private vault, and they're not visible to your end users. Now let's look at the migration approach in itself. There are essentially three aspects to migrating applications from CloudHub 1.0 to 2.0. Okay, one is the infrastructure aspect of it, one is the application aspect of those APIs, and the third one is the operations. Um, so on the infrastructure side, all you have to do is a few things. You have to create a private space manually, but if you want to deploy applications to shared space, you don't have to do this. You can skip this step, and after a proper careful planning, you can migrate all of your existing DLB mapping rules um, with ingress controller in CloudHub 2.0. Okay, now those are two things you have to do at the infrastructure level, right? Create private space if required and migrate your dynamic load balancer mapping rules. And on the application side, there are a few things you have to do before you can migrate your APIs. If your APIs are using persistence queues, they are not supported anymore, so you have to replace them with Anypoint MQ or any other broker. If you're using batch functionality, then you'll have to redesign those APIs as it is not supported yet. Um, uh, any references to shared load balancers have to be replaced with external ingress names provided by CloudHub 2.0. Okay, I think you will also have to replace internal DNS names with CloudHub 2.0 internal ingress private application names. Finally, you will update and deploy your applications in the CloudHub 2.0 runtime. Now, on the operational side, you'll have to do, if you want to automate, make sure you're using the latest version of Maven, starting version 3.7.1 or above, and update the Cloud Hub config parameters and values with the new Maven plugin version. Now, once all these steps are done, you can and your APIs are migrated, you can stop your application running on CloudHub 1.0 and route all the traffic from 1.0 workloads to 2.0 workload. Okay, either by a load balancer or manually. Now, this depends on your runtime deployment architecture. And let's look at some of the best practices. The first one, I would say, try to do as much automation as possible, right? Automate. It's highly recommended for any migration projects to avoid any manual errors. And you can, with automation, you can go to market at a very shorter time frame and get a great ROI. So if you're interested in such an automation solution that can take care of your cloud 2.0 migration projects needs, let us know your interest in the comments. But there is no such automation tool available from MuleSoft yet. Okay. The next one is, we would prefer for large application networks with hundreds of use of APIs. We recommend a phase migration approach to ensure there is little or no business impact. The next is, you'll identify candidates for shared space versus private space. Decide which APIs can be safely deployed to a shared space and which ones you want to keep on a private space. Accordingly, you can create and configure a private space, okay, if required. Analyze your API assets to see which ones are using uh, deprecated features of VM queues and plan your API refactoring effort accordingly. The next thing is publish your artifacts to Exchange before deploying them to the runtime manager. Ensure your API specs that are published to Exchange have a name different than the one used for your API implementations. Many teams tend to use a same name for API spec and the API implementation. This used to work for 1.0, but no longer in 2.0. Okay, and if you're using Maven Mule plugin, make sure you use the version 3.7.1 and update your POM file accordingly. Last mile security, SSL forwarding, great features. You can leverage them for additional security. And rolling update deployments are recommended if you want to minimize business impact, business disruptions. And lastly, after migrating your APIs to CloudHub 2.0, test them thoroughly, right? This is where a lot of misses happen, but you have to make sure you test your use of APIs thoroughly, and make sure you update various application referencing these APIs with the newer URL provided either by your share space or your private space, depending on where you have deployed it. And finally, undeploy, right? Undeploy your APIs running in CloudHub 1.0 after properly assessing that they are no longer required, and thus you can save your Vico usage. So that's it on the theory part. We can, let's see CloudHub 2.0 in action. We will give you a quick demo of what is CloudHub 2.0, how does the interface looks like, and how to migrate APIs from 1.0 to 2.0. Okay, so in today's demo, I want to do two things. One, show you the features of CloudHub 2.0, which is available on this platform, such as private spaces, the new deployment targets, the replica sizes, so on and so forth. And another thing I want to do today is show you how we can easily migrate APIs running on CloudHub 1.0 to 2.0 using an automation solution that we have created. Okay, first a look at the some of the CloudHub 2.0 features. If I click deploy application, you can see the deployment target drop down now has a lot of locations available. Earlier, we only used to have CloudHub. If you had hybrid runtimes, you can see the hybrid target. If you had RTF, you can see runtime fabric targets as well. But now you can see almost 12 locations available throughout the globe for you to deploy. Okay, so that's one change. And here you can see some of those are shared spaces, and one of them is a private space which was created by one of my team members here. The next big change is on the replica size, which is very similar to the worker sizes in Cloud 1.0. Here you have replica sizes, but the amount of memory allocated to those vCores are much higher than what you see in Cloud 1.0. So for instance, for zero point 0.1 vCore, you have 1 gig of memory, zero point 0.2 vCore, 2 gig, zero point 0.5, 2.6 gig, so on. If you look at 1.0 target worker size, they might be much less in size. Of a zero point 0.1 vCore, you only get 500 meg of memory. Okay, that's another change. And replica counts. If you want to have multiple instances of your APIs running, you can increase the replica count to more than one, and also enable click this uh, button to run it in a cluster mode. So we spoke about difference between a cluster and a high available option. So this is the checkbox you need to click to enable that cluster mode settings. Deployment model, you have two options, rolling update and recreate. You could choose one of them here depending on your use case. And you have in the ingress tab, you have a couple of options, last mile security, and forward SSL, which we spoke about during the presentation. And yeah, those are the key things here for a shared space deployment target. Let's look at private spaces. Private space, you can go ahead and create a private space. As I said, it's a dedicated deployment target with its own network and ingress controllers. You can use a private space to access all the benefits of CloudHub 2.0. Okay, so the way to do that is just click this create private space button, fill in a name, private space name. I is I'm not gonna go through all the steps to establish VPNs and connections, but this is how you get started. Define a name and create a network for yourself where you have to enter in some of these data. Okay, choose a CADR block. Ideally, /22 is recommended, so you get a lot of IPs available, but make sure your don't overlap with blocks which are already in use. Right. You can choose your region where you want to have your again your private space defined. Okay, and you can create connections to your external networks. If you have certificates, you can upload them here, create define TLS context, and firewall rules inbound and outbound can be defined here. Attach an environment to your private space, right? So those are the things you could do here. Okay, so that's about the features of CloudHub 2.0. Now what I intend to do is I have created few applications and deployed them onto CloudHub 1.0. Okay, those are RC App 1, RC App 2, RC App 3. Okay, this is the app. Okay, this is RC or App 1. This is RC App 2 running on CloudHub 1.0, and I have RC App 3. Okay, so what I would like to do is migrate all these applications from CloudHub 1.0 to 2.0. For that, okay, so what we did is we created a simple um, solution to automatically migrate APIs. Let's see that in action. This is the script. The script is gonna take API names as the first parameter. You can specify as many API names as you want. I'm gonna give a couple of APIs I wanted to migrate of the three that we have, and artifact IDs. I'm gonna say two artifact IDs for these APIs. Okay. Give multiple, separate by commas, and deployment target. Specify CloudHub US East 1. Runtime version anything over 4.3 should be fine. Let's say I need 4.4. Bridge strategies recreate to save resources. Replica count, I'm happy with one. And that's it. Once you hit enter, it's going to start the migration process. It will first pick those API names and one by one deploy them to CloudHub 2.0. After the deployment is done, it will shut down the APIs from CloudHub 1.0, right? In real world, you would want to have both the APIs running parallelly. Once the APIs are tested thoroughly on CloudHub 2.0, then you would decide to bring down the version running on CloudHub 1.0. But for the sake of this demo, I'm gonna shut down those APIs on version 1.2 as soon as my APIs on 2.2 are successfully deployed. Okay, so as you can see, RCApp 1 is now done. RCApp 2 is almost there. Okay, that's it. So the APIs have been migrated successfully from 1.0 to 2.0. As you can see, the time taken is almost 54 seconds. Again, these are two simple APIs, but I didn't have to do anything on the platform to make this happen. All of this was done automatically behind the scenes using this simple automation solution that we have created. Okay, now let's go back to the platform and check how does it look like. So RC app 1, which was running on CloudHub 1.0, has been successfully undeployed, shut down, and it has been successfully migrated to the shared space CloudHub US East 1. That's a deployment target we selected. So that is where now it has been successfully deployed. It's up and running. Okay. And RC app 2. Okay. So now this is also up and running. This is also running on CloudHub US East 1 target. And this is deployed successfully to CloudHub 2.0. Okay. RC app 3. I didn't do anything. It's still running on CloudHub 1.0. Okay. Let's go ahead and test these APIs and see if they still work. Okay, I'm gonna click this. Okay, invoke the API with a right resource name here, and then okay, this is working fine. That's all it's supposed to do. Let's go back and try to test our the other API, uh, RC app 2. Okay, so this is the URL for that API. Let's see. Okay, so that is also successfully deployed. Okay, that brings us to the end of this demo. I hope you have learned something. Thank you. That's all for today. Thank you all for joining. I hope it was informative. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, we would love to hear your feedback about today's session and your any comments, suggestions. You can share with us by sending an email at info@royalsaver.com, and we will also share a short survey at the end of this session. I would really appreciate if you can fill in your feedback in the survey as well. Thank you very much. We will meet again in another webinar. Until then, take care. Bye.